To some of you, this will be an apology. To others of you, you might be upset. You may or may not have seen an intro before this video started playing. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I was up till 4:30 last night. I had to get up at 7:30 this morning. And so I've decided to record this port. Normally I record the intro version first, then I record this version, then I edit it, then I uploaded it. I've decided to record the talking version first today because I'm running on empty today. I did the Georgia video earlier today. Make sure you click back and watch that if you haven't. The thing is, when Georgia plays a game like they played yesterday, and I do the Your Season is Over video, if I don't spend 20 minutes talking about Georgia, people get mad. Even though I don't spend 20 minutes talking about anybody that wins on the Your Season is Over video. I do have a list on the Your Season is Over video that says, these teams won but looked bad. And 30 seconds to a minute I may spend on it. Had I done that today with Georgia, too many of you would have been mad. So I decided to make a separate video earlier today, which you probably have already seen. If you haven't, you can go back and watch it. But the intro's taken an extraordinarily long amount of time to do. And due to some circumstances beyond my control, I was up till 4:30. I had to get up at 7:30, going on no sleep here. So I'm recording this portion of the video first. We'll see what time it is when I get done. And if I have time to do the whole pointless intro thing that some of you love and some of you hate, that's what I mean by I apologize to some of you and others will be glad or whatever there's not an intro. So we'll just see. So this may be all you get is the talking part. If it is, I apologize. But honestly, if there's going to be a week where we skip the intro, this might be the week to do it. There were some losses yesterday, and of course we're going to talk about them. Of course we're going to talk about them. But there was nothing really all that shocking in terms of teams that lost. Let me just run through a list of teams that lost here, and you tell me how surprised, shocked, or funny you think it is. Arizona, Kentucky, Wisconsin, South Carolina, Boston College, Florida State. I'm going to talk about them first today. That is funny. Florida State, West Virginia lost to Backyard Brawl. Kansas lost again. It's their second loss in a row. Washington lost. Florida. Is Billy Napier still employed? We're going to talk about that too. Vandy lost their first game of the year. Mississippi State lost. There's nothing, last week you had Michigan or whatever. Like it was Notre Dame to huge up. There was nothing like that this week. So if there's going to be a week where we kind of skip the dramatic intro, maybe this is the week. Maybe this is the week to do it. Again, maybe you saw an intro. It all depends on how long it takes me to record this talking part. And then if I can, I'll go back and do the intro. I don't know. So I may have just said all that for nothing, just as a complete waste of time. But welcome to the Your Season is Over video, week 3, 2024 edition, the Point and Laugh special, the only Sunday afternoon, early evening college football recap show that actually matters. There's plenty of places online and everywhere else you can go to read about how great teams looked yesterday and blowouts and amazing wins and great performances. That's not what we do here. We point and laugh at a list of losers. And I'm just going to take the helmets off the wall as we go today. Because again, doing this before the intro. And we've got some losers to talk about. I'm going to give you the best teams I saw play yesterday. I'm going to give you some of the best wins yesterday. Teams that won that looked good. Teams that won but looked bad. Georgia. My updated Heisman list got some changes there. The We're Back list has been reorganized today. And of course, the Josh Pate special, which is pretty obvious today. I'll just be honest with you. The Josh Pate special, pretty obvious. If you live in the state of Florida and you're not a Miami fan, well, you down bad. Central Florida did come back and beat TCU. That might have been the best game of the day yesterday, by the way. Did anyone even notice? It was on the same time the Georgia-Kentucky game was on, and the Colorado State game was a primetime game. But Central Florida was way down on the road against TCU, come back and won the game by 1. One of the more exciting games of the day. Crazy finish with the field goals. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that too. But let's start with Florida State. First of all, I've mentioned this in a couple of videos yesterday, and I think I might have mentioned it in the Georgia video this morning. I'm not moving the Florida State helmet for the rest of the year. I'm leaving it upside down. I'm leaving it on the Your Season is Over wall. I don't care if they beat some meaningless team 3 weeks from now, 100-0. They're staying right there every single week for the rest of this season. Now, if they don't lose, then I just won't talk about them in the Your Season Is Over video, obviously. But I'm getting tired of moving this helmet from here to here, from here to here every damn Sunday. They're now 0-3. They lost again. And because I have all the Power 5 helmets up on the wall and I don't want a permanent blank space in the wall, I have replaced the Florida State helmet where it's supposed to go on the wall with just this sign that says pile of shit. And I think that pretty much speaks for itself. But Florida State embarrassed themselves yet again for the third straight time this season in the last 4 weeks. Of course, they've already had a bye week, that being last week. But because they played in week 0, they have played 3 games. They lost to Georgia Tech. They lost to Boston College. And then yesterday, not only did they lose, they lost to a group of 5 team. And not only did they lose to a group of 5 team, they lost to a group of 5 team where Mike Norvell used to coach, and his assistant coach at the time is now the head coach there. It was just another pitiful performance from Florida State yesterday, and I wrote down some of the numbers. I watched the game. I'm sure you did too. It was at noon. Everybody and their brother who gambles on sports was on Memphis +7, and obviously that was easy money. Not only did they cover the 7, they won the game outright, 20-12. It was never really competitive for Florida State. DJ Ukulele, the Ooga-Badoogie, 16 of 30, barely 50% passing for 200 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Florida State, 37 yards rushing. Look, quarterback is the most glamorous position in sports, probably. We spend an inordinate amount of time, probably too much time, talking about quarterbacks on teams. When teams are good, the quarterback gets way too much credit. When teams are bad, they get way too much blame. All of that is true. It's also true that DJ Ukulele is terrible, but he is not the sole issue with Florida State. I mean, that's obvious, I think. Really, it was obvious going all the way back to week 0 against Georgia Tech. They've got bad lines of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. They have been pushed around up front now in 3 straight games against 2 pretty average ACC teams in Georgia Tech and Boston College, and again against a group of 5 team. And you could type to your blue in the face about how Memphis is one of the best group of 5 teams and a threat to make the playoff and all that. Maybe that's true. No legitimate Power 5 opponent should be losing to a group of 5 team. They just shouldn't. It's embarrassing. It's piss poor, it's pathetic and sad, and all of those things describe Florida State to an absolute T. It is, I'm not going to lie, it is starting to get a little tired laughing at Florida State every week, and I can't believe I'm saying that after the offseason and the way their fans acted. But Florida State as a team, it's getting a little old every week. It's kind of the same jokes about the transfer portal and how the players don't care about the university, and all of that's true. Mike Norvell is a con artist. That's true. He tricked Florida State into giving him a huge extension last year. He's basically got a Jimbo Fisher contract. And here's the thing. They're not firing him. They can't fire him. They can't afford it. And don't tell me you can. You can't. You're wasting what little bit of money you do have, Florida State, on frivolous lawsuits all over the country, suing your conference, suing your TV partners, wasting all that money, begging Wall Street, begging private equity to bail you out. You don't have the money to pay that buyout. You don't. We know you don't have enough money because your sole grievance is that you don't have enough money. That's why you need to leave the ACC. You don't have enough money. He's not getting fired this year. That's bad news number 1. Bad news number 2. His philosophy has failed. He is Dion Light. That's basically what Mike Norvell is. He has leaned way too heavily on the transfer portal. Not to the extent that Dion in Colorado have, but way too heavily on the transfer portal. Especially considering that this is Florida State we're talking about. You take a look at a place like Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and the success he's having there, okay? And they rely very heavily on the portal, but it's Ole Miss. They are never going to be a high school recruiting juggernaut. They're just not. So now that doesn't mean that what Lane Kiffin is doing at Ole Miss is going to work every year. It's not. There's going to be years where if Lane Kiffin continues to do what he's doing at Ole Miss, He's going to bring in a group of transfers that don't pan out, and then they're going to have a terrible year like you're having now. Last year's Florida State team was good because they hit home runs on enough of their transfer targets to make a huge difference during the season in the majority of their games. They were not a good program last year. And that's part of the problem, is that a lot of people either don't understand the difference, or when they're speaking, they don't make the distinction. A lot of people will use the term, it's a bad program, when the team is not any good. And a lot of people will use the phrase, it's a bad team, when it's the program that's not any good. Those are two separate things, okay? Florida State was a good team last year. They were not a good program. I don't believe that you can establish a good program that way. I'm up in the air on whether or not Ole Miss is a good program. And they're one of the best teams in the country this year, just like you were one of the best teams in the country last year. I mean, all of that is true. All of that. Look what just fell down. I guess we'll do them next. I'll hang it up in a minute. Isn't that weird? It's always a team that you're going to take down anyway. So that's the problem. He has chosen to go about things a certain way too heavy on the portal. Even if he changes his mind now, which is what he should have done when he was first hired, you're looking at a 3-year turnaround, because it does take time to build through high school recruiting. 100%. That's not an overnight fix. But the talk about the culture in the off season, the whole thing with the band not playing the war chant on third down. You know who said that? The players. The players are the one that asked the band not to play war chant on third down. They asked them to play DJ music, club music instead. Now, why would FSU players ask the band to stop doing something, a tradition that they've been doing for almost 40 years? Why would they do that? Because they don't care about Florida State. They don't have any ties to Florida State. They weren't recruited by Florida State in a lot of cases in terms of out of high school. And grow up Florida State fans, they're mercenaries looking for a paycheck out of the portal, and there's Mike Norvell ready to hand them $1. And when you hit on a lot of those at a high level at key positions, you can have a season like you had last year. But portal players are not there for 4 or 5 years. In most cases, they're there for 1 or 2, and then they're gone. And then you're right back to square zero again, because you don't have that high school recruiting base. And again, at a place like Florida State, in the middle of Florida, with the recent history, and when I say recent history, I mean the 30-year or so history that they've had, 40-year history that they've had of being just what they've been. The idea that he would not take advantage of that and build through high school recruiting is mind-numbing to me. And then you've got the issue about the quarterback guru. He's not, what quarterback guru? What, he had Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis was just a good quarterback. What anything Mike Norvell did. Mike Norvell's been at Florida State for 5 years. Where's the quarterback that he recruited, signed, developed, and is now ready to come in, since it's obvious ukulele's not any good? Answer, there ain't one. It's a very bad situation at Florida State, and it's one that's not likely to improve. And on top of that, you're not getting out of the ACC. Not anytime soon. You're in the ACC this year. You'll be in the ACC next year. Probably be in the ACC in 2026 too. I mean, the SEC doesn't want you. The Big Ten doesn't want you. Why would these conferences, you're not a good team and you're not a good program. You keep barking about the damn ratings and all that. Yeah, people like to watch train wrecks. Colorado's ratings are sky high. Big Ten or SEC lined up to get them too? No, people watch them because they like to watch them lose. That's why they're watching you. Why would the Big Ten or the SEC, the Big Ten and the SEC doesn't need Florida State. Florida State needs them. Why do the Big Ten and the SEC want to take on the risk or liability of bringing on a bad team and a bad program who's currently suing their own conference and their own TV partner? Why would the Big Ten do that? Why would Fox do that? Why would the SEC or ESPN or Disney or ABC or whatever do that? Answer, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Better carry your ass to the Big 12, or better yet, how about the new Pac-12? Go out there with Fresno State and San Diego State and them. How about that? Florida State, y'all are terrible. Couldn't happen to a better fan base this year, too. The Florida State fans are just, beyond insufferable. Okay, West Virginia, so we'll go to that now. Backyard Brawl. Let's hang this up on the wall. Yes, I made some I guess, disparaging comments or some comments that some people took in a disparaging way, not about West Virginia and not about Pitt, but about the Pitt versus West Virginia game of rivalry. Look, I understand that's a big rivalry game. I do. For Pitt and for West Virginia. And for people who live in Pennsylvania. And for people who live in West Virginia. Or for people who went to either of those schools, maybe. Maybe even regionally beyond those two states. Maybe. Okay? But the reality is that this is a rivalry for whatever reason that just doesn't register on the national scene. It's not an insult to Pitt or West Virginia as a school, as a team, as an institution, as a university. It's not an insult to their players or to their coaches. I'm just telling you, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been talking to college football fans from across the country for 10 years in the comment section, in live chats, on the phone 2 nights a week for 7 years on the call-in show. And we talk about college football rivalries constantly. We talk about them during the season when they come up. We talk about them every offseason. What are the biggest rivalries? What about this rivalry? What about where do you rate this rivalry? Oh, this rivalry is going to be real good next year. Both those teams might be good. Talk about it constantly, year round. Nobody talks about it. That's all I meant, is that it doesn't register on the Pitt West Virginia game, the Backyard Brawl. Now maybe it's because y'all don't play every year. I'm sure that's got something to do with it. Look, there are 20-year-olds who don't understand the Texas A&M rivalry, right? That's not disparaging to Texas or Texas A&M. They haven't played in 15 years. I mean, y'all play more often than that, but you don't play every year. So it has something to do with it. But I didn't mean that as an insult to Pitt or West Virginia or their fans or anyone else. That's just the reality. But you ask people to start naming rivalries, they're going to get to 15 or 16 rivalries before that even crosses their mind. That's just the reality of the situation. I get it. It is a bitter rivalry to Pitt and West Virginia. No question. Oklahoma and Texas don't hate each other any more than Pitt and West Virginia hate each other. That's not what I mean. Believe me, I know. I've got friends that are diehard West Virginia fans. I've got in-laws that are from West Virginia. Believe me, I get it. I'm just telling you, on a national scale, from a college football national fandom point of view, it just barely registers. So again, take everything personally. It's on you. If you want to take something personal, how about this? West Virginia, you lost again. This time to Pitt, 38-34. Neil Brown, fool's gold. I was riding Neil Brown hard into the ground 3 years ago and 2 years ago. I said, this guy didn't know what he's doing. West Virginia downgraded when they got rid of their previous coach and hired that guy. They need to get rid of him. West Virginia fans didn't want to hear it. 2 years ago, they started to kind of jump onto the bandwagon. Yeah, you're right. This is, whatever it was, his third terrible season in a row. Might need to look at getting rid of him, blah, blah, blah. They were starting to come around. And then last year happened. And so then you're sitting there going, well, we can't fight. They won 8 or 9 games last year, whatever it was, when they were picked to only win 3. So he massively overachieved last year. No doubt, no question about it. Neil Brown did. But that's dangerous because you've got a coach here in Neil Brown with a 4 or 5 year track record now. One of those years is good. One. And it looks like this year is headed the wrong direction too. And so he has one good year last year. And like a lot of teams, fans, and schools do, you overreact. Oh, glad we didn't get rid of him. He's a great coach. Let's give him a huge raise and an extension and all that. It made no sense. It made no sense. So I'm just curious, now that we're 3 weeks into the season and you've seen this year's version of West Virginia, I'm curious what the West Virginia fans are thinking now about our buddy Doo-Doo Brown. It made me eat my words last year a little bit because he, like I said, he massively overachieved. But it appears like that might have been a 1 year anomaly deal. Florida State's going through the same thing now with Mike Norvell. This is about to be Mike Norvell's 3rd losing season in 5 years at Florida State. Yet he has a great year last year, and they rush and give him a huge extension and bonus and raise, and it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm just curious what the West Virginia fans think. But Pitt did get the win. So chalk one up for the ACC there over the Big 12 in the Backyard Brawl. West Virginia's second loss of the season after dropping a game to Penn State. Shout out to West Virginia, though, for scheduling some big non-con games early in the year, right? They're not hiding from anything. You got to remember, they play 9 conference games. 9 in the Big 12, right? So that's 9 conference games they play. They played Penn State, a Power 5 team. That's 10. Now they played Pitt, a Power 5 team. That's 11. They only play 1 non-Power 5 team, you know. Georgia plays 2 Power 5 non-con opponents this year, just like West Virginia does. But Georgia only plays an 8-game conference schedule. So that leaves Georgia with 2 lower classification games, not just the 1. So shout out to West Virginia for the scheduling. But it doesn't do much good to schedule if you lose. Do it. No, it don't. No, it don't. Garrett Green, I don't know why this always happens to me. I hyped this guy up. Now he's terrible. The last month of the offseason, I kept talking about Garrett Green. Best quarterback nobody talks about. Garrett Green at West Virginia. Have a big year. Ain't working out. I don't know. Do we blame Doo-Doo Brown? Massive disappointment. Yeah, you're 1-2. Yesterday he was 16 of 30. Not good. Defense played okay. Held Pitt under 100 yards rushing. I think they had 78, 75, 78, 80, something like that rushing yards Pitt did. But they found a way to win. Crazy game. Again, yes, it's a rivalry game. Yes, it's a huge rivalry game to Pitt and West Virginia. Yes, it was a great game yesterday. All I meant was that nationally it doesn't register with what a lot of people consider to be your big college football rivalries. Take it any way you want. Take it any way you want. But there you go. I feel bad even doing this, but look, if Georgia lost by 1 point, you would cry if I didn't do it. Kentucky lost by 1, but they lost. That's the way it goes. On the Your Season is Over video. People say, doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Or no, what do they say? Doesn't matter if you win by 1 or win by 100, a win's a win. Well, we all know that's not true in college football because you got human beings voting on where you go in the postseason. So no, a win is not a win in college football. But when it comes to the Your Season is Over video, a win is a win. And Kentucky just couldn't get the job done. There's a few things I could talk about in this game, but I'm going to skip to the end. Kentucky's a massive underdog in this game. 24-point underdog to start the week. It came down to around 21 or 22 at kickoff, but nevertheless, they were a 3-touchdown or more underdog in this game at home, coming off an embarrassing loss to South Carolina. And you're hosting the number 1 team in the country, at least according to the AP poll. I did not have Georgia number 1 in my rankings last week. So who wants to give me credit for that instead of just, this guy just a blind Georgia home. I didn't have Georgia number 1 in my ranking, but the AP did. So, Kentucky, that's what's going on. You just lost an embarrassing home game to South Carolina where you got blown out 31-6. You got the number 1 team in the country coming into your place. You're a 3+ touchdown underdog. You look up on the clock in the fourth quarter, and there's about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to go, whatever it was. And you are down 1 point with the ball in Georgia territory. And you punt the ball away. If I was not a Georgia fan, I would have been, I said it during the live stream. I said, I'm glad they're punting. I don't want them to go for it. I was afraid they were going to get it if they went for it and then kick a game-winning field goal and Georgia was going to lose. So as a Georgia fan, I was happy as hell that they punted. That was boneheaded, Stoops. And I think Stoops, generally speaking, is a good coach. I mean, I think he's done pretty much the best that anybody could have done with what he's had to work with at Kentucky over the last 5 or 6 years. I think he's a good coach with a really good staff. They're not a great team at all. But my God, you find yourself down 1 to the number 1 team in the country at home with 2 minutes to go in the game, and you've got the ball on their side of the field, and you punt it away. Now, it was 4th and 8. I'm sure if it was 4th and 1, 4th and 2, probably even 4th and 4, they'd probably line up and go for it. So I'm sure the reasoning was, well, it was 4th and 8, and we had timeouts left, and our defense had played well, and all of that is true. But man, it seems boneheaded. I haven't really heard from the Kentucky fans specifically about what they think about that, but I'm assuming they're irate about that. I would have been, like I said, as a Georgia fan watching the game, wanting Georgia to win, I was glad they punted. I was damn glad they punted. But that had to drive the Kentucky fans up the wall. As far as the game goes, I was surprised really at how not bad Brock Vandagriff played. After what I saw last week against South Carolina from Brock Vandagriff, I thought Georgia was going to eat him alive. And look, Georgia's defense played pretty good. I mean, this is the fourth game in a row that Georgia has not allowed a touchdown. Florida State last year, Clemson in week 1, elementary school week 2, Kentucky yesterday. 4 straight games, Georgia's not allowed a touchdown. So the defense played okay. A lot of bend, but don't break. But Brock Vandagriff, he didn't have a great game. I think he barely threw for 100 yards. He wasn't a great game. But I thought he scrambled well. I thought he avoided the pressure well. He did make a couple of good throws. But more importantly, he didn't turn the ball over 3 times or stumble over his own feet at his own 1 yard line. That was the kind of shit he was doing last week at home against South Carolina. I talked about it all last week. I could not believe how bad Brock Vandagriff looked last week against South Carolina. I could not believe it. But he did look bad. So did he play great yesterday? No. But the bar was so low, he soared over that thing. Hell, he probably played better than Carson Beck. It was close. Carson Beck had his worst game as a starter by far. The story of the game is not that Kentucky lost, right? It's that Georgia won by 1, and I get that. And again, that is why I uploaded a 20-minute video already today where I shit on Georgia for 20 or 25 minutes straight, because that's just not what we do in the Your Season Is Over video. And there's probably going to be comments, even though I made the video, that are saying, look at this guy glossing over the fact that Georgia only won by one. That's not what we do here. There's another list of teams coming up that I do towards the end of the video called teams that won that look bad. Georgia will be on that list, just like there's teams on those steroids. So don't worry, but you can watch that. You want to see me shit on Georgia, go watch that video I made. Yeah, they look terrible, but Kentucky, you lost. Second loss in a row, second SEC loss. You know the deal. Your season is over. How we doing? Let's keep it moving. The Cheeseheads over here. Cheeseheads lost yesterday, and boy, it's almost like, I don't know. You got to remember, I've never seen a football game. If you don't believe me, just go check my comment section. There's people in there every day telling me I must not watch football, so keep that in mind. I've never seen a game, so I want you to keep that in mind here. Apparently, and I don't know if this is true. Y'all can let me know in the comments down below. But this is a rumor I heard. Apparently, a team can play like complete shit 1 week and really good the next week. Is that true? Like I said, I've never seen a football game. Alabama, terrible against South Florida last week, comes out, runs Wisconsin out of their own building yesterday. How good did Alabama play? Alabama played so good yesterday that Jalen Milroe looked like a good passer. That's how good they played. And that's rare. You don't see that very often because he's not a good passer. But he was yesterday against Wisconsin. Wisconsin got out to a 3-0 lead in this game, and that was it. The Bama rolled from that point forward. They ran it down their throat. That 17-year-old wide receiver went nuts again. Like I said, Jalen Milroe played really, really good, but not just running. I mean, he played the position of quarterback good yesterday. I feel bad for Tyler Van Dyke, the quarterback for Wisconsin. It feels weird to use this term in college, but he's kind of a journeyman quarterback. It seems like he's been around a long time. He was at Miami and had the starting job there and played well for a while. Injuries kind of derailed his time there, so he hits the portal. He ends up at Wisconsin. He names the starter this year, and it did not look good for him yesterday. That looked like a season-ending knee injury to me. I'm not a doctor. I didn't hear no kind of medical report. Just, again, watching it on TV, seeing what happened, seeing the brace on him afterwards and everything. It doesn't look good. And I hate that for Tyler Van Dyke. I don't know how much eligibility he's got left. And look, I don't want anybody to get injured, whether they've got 10 years of eligibility left or none. But it's obviously really, really tragic when somebody that's in their last year of eligibility goes down. And I don't know that to be the case. you got all kinds of eligibility extensions now because of COVID or medical reasons or whatever. So he may have another year. I hope for his sake he does, but the injury didn't look good. But that has nothing to do with what happened in this game yesterday. Tyler Van Dyke was not beating Alabama. Wisconsin is just... Luke Fickell's been a disappointment to me since he got to Wisconsin. I know it's only his second year, and I know Wisconsin wasn't great when he got there. I get all that. But Wisconsin doesn't look any better at all to me 2 years into the Luke Fickell era than they did before they hired him. I mean, they just, you can make an argument they look a little worse. And there is a little bit of reasoning for that if you want to try to reason it away. Forever. Wisconsin's been this, 3-yard cloud of dust, 2 NFL running backs pound it between the tackles and throw the ball 25% of the time team, right? And Luke Fickell pretty much announced right away when he was hired, we're doing away with that. We're bringing in an offensive coordinator. Longo, is that his name, that runs the air raid, and we're going to start chunking this ball around. Well, the roster last year was filled with an offensive line, running backs and wide receivers that just weren't designed to do that. So it was more of the old style Wisconsin last year, even in Luke Fickell's first year. But now here we are in year 2. And you know what it reminds me of? You remember my buddy David Shaw at Stanford? Well, I loved David Shaw as a coach. I used to talk about him and how much I liked him all the time. He was running an SEC school on the West Coast, and, the big offensive line and NFL tight ends and NFL running back, a game managing QB and a good enough defense to win a lot of games. I just liked the style of football they were playing. And then out of the blue, for no reason, David Shaw announces 1 year he's going to the air raid. 2 years later, he was out of a job. Sometimes it's not easy to transition a school from what they've been doing forever to sort of something new. And Luke Fickell is finding that out at Wisconsin. I have not been impressed with him. He came over from Cincinnati, led them to the playoffs. They are a long way away from that at Wisconsin, a long way away. And Bama really took it to him yesterday. And so I made mention of this in the video I made earlier about how bad Georgia looked yesterday. I'll mention it briefly again here. I know it's the internet and it's the Twitter age and comment section, and sort of overreaction is the way to go. And like every team is either really good or really bad, and there is no in between. And a team is whatever you most recently saw them be, right? So like Alabama last week plays South Florida, and they just look like complete trash for 55 minutes of the game. And then in the last 5 minutes, when South Florida is wore down and beat up, they score 4 touchdowns late in the game. But for the majority of that game, Alabama looked terrible. And so what's the thing to do as soon as the game ends? Oh, yeah, that's it for Bama, boy. They're going to lose 3 games playing like that. They'll lose to Tennessee. They'll lose to Georgia. They'll lose to Oklahoma at the end of the year. Auburn might even beat them, boy. You see what South Florida did to them? Oh, boy, they play like that again. Look, I do it. Everybody does it. And so, right on cue, Georgia comes out the next week, does the same thing against Kentucky, right? And Alabama comes out and destroys Wisconsin. So what's the thing now? Well, Georgia's going 8-4. They're going 8-4. That team I saw yesterday, they got pushed around by Kentucky. Boy, Bama will beat them by 3 touchdowns. Tennessee will beat them by 4 touchdowns. Ole Miss will beat them by 5 touchdowns. And Texas will beat them by 6 touchdowns. Well, Georgia, the run is over. You're going 8-4. Yeah. If the Georgia that played Kentucky yesterday shows up in any of those 4 games, yes, they'll lose. They'll lose. If the Alabama that played the first 55 minutes against South Florida shows up with the Georgia that played Clemson, Alabama will get blown out. Neither one of those things is likely to happen, but it's the internet. I get it. Like everything is either they're the best or they're the worst, right? So, the first 55 minutes of the Alabama game, they're terrible. They'll be lucky to win another game. Georgia beats Kentucky by 1. They'd be lucky to make a bowl game. They're terrible. It's like, man, if Georgia plays their worst game of the year against a good team, they'll lose. Oh, yeah? Really? Wow. Thanks for that in-depth analysis, buddy. You know what I'm saying? What are the odds that Alabama shows up to play Georgia in 2 weeks and plays like they played against South Florida? What do you think those odds are? Zero. None. It's not happening. Georgia's going to get the best version of Bama. What do you think the odds are that in 2 weeks, when Georgia shows up to play Bama, you're going to get the same effort and play calling and production and all that you got yesterday from Georgia in the Kentucky game? Zero. None. Not going to. Zero. You're going to get the best version of both teams. It's a massive game. I'm not saying that to tell you Georgia will win. I am saying that to tell you that you're not getting that version of Georgia from yesterday against Kentucky, and Georgia's not getting the South Florida version of Alabama. I mean, I know y'all have been watching football a while, and again, I get it, it's the internet. But come on, man. 2 years ago, Georgia went 15-0. They beat everybody they played by an average of 30 points. They won the national title game by 60 points 2 years ago, 2022. They beat Tennessee by 40 when Tennessee was ranked number 1 in the country. I mean, they just destroyed they beat Oregon by 40. They just beat everybody they played. Except Kentucky. They played Kentucky on the road in Kentucky. And guess what? Did I even bother to write this shit down? Yeah, here we go. They scored 16 points. They beat Kentucky like 16-10 or whatever it was 2 years ago in Kentucky. The year they went 15-0 and won the national title. And guess what everybody told me after the Kentucky game? Well, that's it for Georgia. They can hang it up. Not winning nothing. Might make the SEC title game, but they'll get beat by whoever they play out of the West because the SEC East no good. And they only scored 16 on Kentucky. Georgia averaged 40 points a game that year. They'll average 40 points a game this year. They won't score 40 against Bama. I'd be shocked if they scored 40 against Bama. But they'll get into the 20s or 30s, and the goal will be to hold Bama to less than that. It's going to be a great game is what I'm saying. I'm not expecting Bama to come out and look like they looked against South Florida. And you shouldn't be expecting Georgia to come out and look like they looked against Kentucky. It'll be a good game. I picked Georgia to win in the offseason. Georgia was a 4-point favorite. We'll see what the updated line is in next Sunday when the line for the game comes out. Bama might be a favorite now. I might go with Bama in that game when I do my predictions during the week. Because I do have some concerns for Georgia, particularly the lines of scrimmage. That's why Georgia lost to Bama last year was the lines of scrimmage. But anyway, so Kentucky, your season. Let's move on. Again, if you want to hear more of my thoughts about Georgia, Kentucky, and what it means for the Georgia-Bama game, I uploaded a video this morning. It's 20 minutes long, and it's all about that. You can go back and watch it. But I feel like I'm repeating now what I said in that video. So let's move on if we can. And I'm pretty sure that we can. Man, I hate to do this. No, I don't. Love to do this. What am I looking for? It's upside down. Now, I'm going to need a South Carolina fan because I have not checked the stat on this yet. Should I check it now? No, I'm not going to check it now. South Carolina fan can let me know. The South Carolina helmet is upside down. Why? Glad you asked. The South Carolina helmet is upside down because a South Carolina fan, not me, a South Carolina fan said, hey, Lou, hang the South Carolina helmet upside down until they go a game, giving up less than 3 sacks. And in the first game and the second game, games they won, they gave up 3 or more sacks in both of those games. So the helmet has remained upside down. I've been getting a few South Carolina fans that say, bro, we're 2-0, turn the helmet back. It's got nothing to do with the win or loss record. And it's not my rule. Any of the helmets that are upside down, Florida State, South Carolina, Clemson, is because fans of that team said, hey, man, turn our helmet upside down until we do A, B, or C. For Florida State, it was win an ACC game. For South Carolina, it was play a game with less than 3 sacks. And for our Tater buddies, Clemson, it's play a game with no turnovers because they've got 17 or 18 games straight now with a turnover. So like Clemson beat the absolute shit out of App State last week, I still had to leave the helmet upside down because the Clemson fan, not me, said leave Clemson upside down until we go a game with no turnovers. So that's the deal with the South Carolina helmet. But this was a crazy game yesterday. This was a wild game. South Carolina got out to a 17-0 lead. You got to remember, LSU was favored by almost a touchdown in this game. LSU was a 6.5-point favorite at kickoff. Game was played in Columbia at Williams-Brice. College game day was there. So you knew the crowd was going to be hyped up and ready to go, and you figured the team would too. And when I talked about this game, I said I won't be at all surprised to see Carolina get out to a lead in the first half, or at a minimum, keep it really, really close in the first half. I did not think they would be up 17-0. in the first half. And when they did get up 17-0, I said, well, that's it. This was over. They're not coming back. This crowd is in it now. You go to a place like that where the crowd is nuts, you got to take them out of the game early. And LSU didn't do that. But you know what LSU did do? Come back and win the game. In brutal fashion. Just heartbreaking for the South Carolina. Soul crushing for the South Carolina man. Oh, I hated to see it. 36-33, they lost to LSU. Somebody had to win that game. This was one of those both teams were trying to lose deals. It wasn't as bad as the Oklahoma State-Arkansas game from the week before, but my God, there was some boneheaded coaching decisions again made in this game. Brian Kelly, I can't understand. I can't figure this guy out. You go back to the Southern Cal game. LSU has the ball early in the game, first quarter, I believe. They get down inside the 5-yard line on 4th down, and they don't kick a field goal. They go for it. And, of course, they don't get it. That's leaving 3 points on the field. That cost them a ton in the last 2 or 3 minutes of that game when they were the clock management situation, when you're doing things based on how many points you need or how many scores you need. Those 3 points could have changed the way the last 3 or 4 minutes of that game were played. He did it again yesterday, this time in the third quarter. They get the ball in the third quarter. They go all the way down the field. They get inside the 10-yard line. The offense stalls. And again, this is a one-possession game. And he goes for it again and doesn't get it. I don't understand this shit, man. I don't get it. There are certain situations where going for it on 4th down makes sense. Mark Stoops yesterday probably should have went for it on that 4th down. Didn't. These are 2 examples here where I don't know what the fuck Brian Kelly's doing. And then South Carolina, same thing. Missed field goals, not taking field goals. It's just, that was 2 poorly coached teams yesterday, I think. South Carolina's got some positives to them. That Lenore Sellers had a 75-yard touchdown run. Steve Urkel. He got hurt for a little while, but he came back in, so that was good news. That was really good news if you're a South Carolina fan, because guess who the backup is? Robbie Ashford. Who remembers that dud from Auburn? What a woozy. So I thought Lenore Sellers played okay. South Carolina's front 4 for the second week in a row, I thought played pretty well. I mean, they dominated the Kentucky game last week. That South Carolina front did. And I thought they played well again against LSU. It feels like when you watch South Carolina and LSU play, that the players have to be good enough to overcome the boneheaded coaching decisions that are made by their own coaches during the game. It's got to be frustrating for both the LSU fans who ended up winning the game, but lost to Southern Cal, really as a direct result of boneheaded coaching. I mean, they had 2 bad penalties. That's on the players in that Southern Cal game. But anyway, and the South Carolina fans, I mean, you're sitting there at 2-0. South Carolina fans were in the absolute toilet after that Old Dominion game. I mean, they were ready to jump off of a building, right? Then they go and destroy Kentucky on the road. And again, we're sky high. And then game day says they're coming. And then they're out in a 17-0 lead. I mean, the South Carolina fans have been on a roller coaster of emotion for 40 or 50 years. So they're no strangers to it. But it was absolutely brutal. Blew a 17-0 lead in the first half. Let LSU come all the way back. Then they missed a field goal at the end of the game. South Carolina did that would have tied it up and sent it over. Just a brutal way to lose. Man, I hate that for South Carolina. I really do, man. Dang. I really hate that. I hate that for South Carolina. Let's get this one out of the way. Florida. By the time you watch this video, Florida may be in the market for a new head coach. It's hard to know anymore when it comes to the internet what's real and what's not sometimes, what's fact and what's fiction, what's rumor, and what really has some maybe validity to it. But there is a lot of talk, smoke, whatever you want to call it, about Billy Napier being fired at Florida much sooner rather than much later, as in today or tomorrow. Reports of every school calls it something different. So at Florida, I'm not sure if it's the Board of Trustees or the Board of Governors or the Directors Board, or whatever. They have a name for whatever makes these decisions. All kinds of rumors that they're meeting today. Rumors that there'll be an announcement tomorrow. Rumors that there will be an announcement at 5 o'clock today. Rumors that the Florida Boosters and the NIL Collective, which is really the same thing these days, have raised the 28 million or whatever it is buyout for Billy Napier, and that they're ready to move on and fire him now. Again, I'm recording this around lunchtime. You probably won't see it till 5 or 6 o'clock tonight. So we may already know by the time you're listening to this loudmouth idiot right here, me, you may already know Billy Napier's future. But don't we already know Billy Napier's? We've known it. I've been telling you for over a year that Billy Napier was going to be fired after his third year or during his third year, that he would only be the coach at Florida for 3 years, and that he would either get fired at the end of the third year or sometime during the season of his third year. If they fire him now, it's a little surprising to me. They've lost 2 games. They were underdogs in both. Now, they were both at home. They were both embarrassing losses where they didn't play well. And I wrote some stats down, but I mean, do you really need to hear them? And hopefully this is enough to shut the Florida fans up about DJ Lagway. He was terrible too. 6 of 13 for 54 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, negative 20 yards rushing for Lagway. Now, of course, in college, sacks count against your rushing totals, but that's another freshman issue. See, in high school, especially with these athletic quarterbacks that can run around a lot, in high school, they can run circles around defensive linemen for 10 minutes in the backfield, waiting on receivers to get open. And very rarely does anything bad happen because they're the best player on the field in most cases, and they're faster and quicker than everybody else out there. So as a true freshman, when they first get to college, it takes them a while to figure out that they can't do that anymore. That 320-pound defensive lineman is just as fast as you are. And so you get, holding the ball too long, getting sacked, but he didn't play well. Florida's not a good team. They don't have the roster to compete in the SEC. They definitely don't have the coaching to compete in the SEC. So it's not a surprise that they lost these 2 games. I thought the earliest possible chance that Billy Napier would get fired would be after the Central Florida game. That's a game that I feel like you can point to if you're a Florida fan or the administration and go, we should not be losing that. Miami is a top 10 team, no matter how mad that makes you, Miami is a top 10 team. Texas A&M, while not great at all, is better than Florida. So those losses shouldn't be surprising. But that Central Florida game that's coming up in a couple of weeks, this is a team that just became Power 5 2 years ago. I thought if it goes bad in the first month of the season and they lose to Central Florida, they could fire him then. So I would be surprised if they fired him this early. But again, by the time you're watching this, they may already have fired him, if you believe the Twitter rumors. But he will not be the coach there next year. We've known that for a while. I've known that for a while. I've been telling you that for a while. I don't think that's any doubt. Lane Kiffin seems to be the biggest name floating out there for potential replacements for Billy Napier. I think that would be a great hire for Florida, and I think they should make the phone call and talk to him about it. I have my doubts as to how that will work if Ole Miss makes the playoffs. I think if Ole Miss makes the playoffs, it becomes infinitely harder for Florida to hire him away from Ole Miss because they would have to. You got to remember, signing day is the second week in December before the playoffs even start. On top of that, the portal opens right after that. Florida cannot wait until the middle or end of December, or God forbid Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin win a couple of playoff games and they're still playing in January. They can't wait that long to hire a coach and announce to their team and their recruiting class that, hey, this is who we're bringing in. It'll be too late. If December 10th rolls around and Florida doesn't have a head coach, Lagway is gone. And probably LJ McCray and half the team probably, right? And the recruiting class will fall apart. So I don't know how that will play out with Lane Kiffin if Ole Miss appears to be a playoff team. Another name I heard today, and again, you never know with the internet, Jimbo Fisher. Now, this would be a disaster. This would be a disaster. I'm on record. I think Lane Kiffin's the best hire they can make, but they might not be able to get him. I don't know. But there's other names out there that would be a lot. I think Jimbo Fisher would be an epic failure if that's the direction they go. And again, it's the internet, it's Twitter, it's rumors. I don't know how much truth there is to it. I don't know. But if it's Jimbo Fisher, you're likely to be searching for a coach again in 3 years. I told you, Florida, you are 2015, 2016, 2017 Tennessee. That's where you're at right now in your 40-year wander of the desert. You're in the middle of it. You're not at the end of it. You're not at the beginning of it, luckily for you. You're in the middle. You're where Tennessee was 8 years ago, okay? And if you hire Jimbo Fisher, boy, the light at the end of that tunnel is getting further and further away if you do that. Florida season is over. And just like with South Carolina, it just breaks me up. I hate it. I really do. I hate it. Dang. Mississippi State and Vandy lost. I'm not even going to take their helmets down. It's Vandy's first loss of the year. We've taken Vandy's helmet down a million times. I'm not going to take it down again. Where is it? I do like the Vandy helmet, matte black. A lot of people keep asking me why, Miami fans in particular. What's wrong with y'all? Miami fans keep crying. Oh, take the black helmet down. We like the white. Put the one. I like matte black helmets, man. It's got nothing to do with Miami. Look, I got the matte black. Georgia fans mad too. They want me to take that. I've got the red Georgia helmet. I've got the white Miami helmet. I'm partial to the matte black helmets. I don't know why. I can't help it. I've got a lot of alternate helmets that are matte black. Hawaii, North Texas. That's right. Vandy, Mizzou, NC State, Iowa State, BYU, Cal, Stanford, TCU. You can't even hardly read that, but believe it or not, it's Duke. There is a D on there. I'm just partial to the matte black helmet. So no, I'm not taking the black Miami or the black Georgia helmet down. So stop crying in the comments section. I'm also not taking down this sign that says pile of shit, because that's a reminder of where the Florida State helmet used to go before it relocated to its permanent home right up underneath the "your season is over" helmet. But Vandy and Mississippi State's got to be the worst team in the SEC, don't they? Vandy was 2-0 till yesterday with a Power 5 win, so they're 2-1. Mississippi State got blown out by Toledo, 41-17. God, not enough cowbell. I don't know what to tell you. That's embarrassingly bad. Who else do we want to put on here? Let's do, I don't know. Yeah, we'll do this. Washington lost, Oregon won. So, two old school Pac-12 in-state rivalries. Washington State, Oregon State. Both games were played yesterday, early in the season as non-con games because, of course, Washington State and Oregon State got left behind. Oregon State, who we'll talk about in a minute when we talk about the teams that won and looked good, did beat Oregon State, but Washington cannot say the same. They lost to Washington State, and I'm happy for Washington State. And I don't have any hate for Oregon, but it would have been nice to see Oregon State win yesterday too. I do feel bad for these teams that get left behind, right? Everybody in the Pac-12 pulled up stakes and got the hell out of Dodge. And Oregon State and Washington State are sitting around going, they're like, have you seen the movie, what's it called? Office, what's the name of that damn movie? God damn it. Office, where the guy works at the office. What the hell was that now? That damn Washington helmet fell. What's the name of that movie? Where they work at the office? Office Space. All right, I hung the Washington helmet back up. Office Space. You see the movie Office Space? There's the fat, nerdy guy that was fired like 5 years ago, but nobody tells him. So he's got a desk in there, and they keep moving his desk further and further back into the corner, and eventually they move his desk down to the basement. And, he's like, right in my stapler. They told me this was my stapler. That's Washington State and Oregon State. And I feel bad for them. So I was glad to see Washington State win. I don't have any hate for Washington either. They were a great team last year, a playoff team. And, once DeBoer left, you kind of knew. It would have been tough sledding for Washington this year, even if DeBoer would have stayed. They had one of the most veteran teams in all of college football last year. They lost 21 of their 22 starters, either to graduation, NFL draft, or transfer portal. Then on top of that, they had to bring in an entire new coaching staff. So it was easy to see that maybe Washington would struggle a little this year and definitely take a step back from where they were last year. Now, they didn't stop the 3 Washington fans in my comment section for yelling at me last week for not having Washington ranked. They're not a top 25 team, dude. Just because they were 2-0 doesn't make them a top 25 team. And not only did they lose to Washington State, they got blown out. No. They lost 24-19. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Oregon State score. Oregon blew out Oregon State. Washington lost 24-19. So shout out to Washington State. Look, this was the Super Bowl this year for Washington State and Oregon State. And I don't even mean that in a derogatory manner. You know how the South Carolina game is Tennessee's Super Bowl? And that is derogatory. I don't even mean it in a derogatory way. These Tennessee fans, man, and I'm going to talk about them in a little bit in a minute, but if I make a video and I don't mention Tennessee, a million of them show up in my comment section and go, he didn't say a word about Tennessee. He's scared. If I talk about Tennessee in a video, the same million butt-funneling hill-jack retards show up in my comment section and they go, look how he talks about Tennessee. He's scared. This was their Super Bowl. They technically have a road to the playoffs, but come on, we kind of knew. And then they got left out of all the expansion and all that. It's kind of like the orphan that nobody wanted to run to the litter type of deal. Just leave them behind. They'll be fine. But I felt kind of bad for them. So, do I have anything against Washington? No. But was I happy to see Washington State win what I know is their biggest game of the year? Yeah. Oregon State, on the other hand, they took a brutal beating. I'm not going to take their helmet down because, again, I feel bad for them. I'm going to leave their helmet there. But, hey, Oregon, welcome to the 2024 college football season. We missed you. We put out an APB, an all-points bulletin. We put out a bolo. Be on the lookout. We had you on the sides of milk cartons. Has anybody seen Oregon? Where are they? One of the most talked about, hyped up teams of the offseason, top 5 of every preseason ranking on earth. Going to beat Ohio State during the regular season in Eugene and make the Big Ten title game. Definitely making the playoffs. Boy, we missed you for the first 3 weeks of the season. Welcome to the party. Glad you finally decided to show up. And they did show up. They beat the absolute soul and will to live out of Oregon State yesterday. It's like they took out the last 2 weeks worth of frustration when they couldn't get a first down against the entire state of Idaho. They took their frustration out 49-14 on Oregon State. So that's all I'm going to say about it. I'll mention Oregon again when I mention the teams that won and looked good, but that's it. Oregon, welcome to 2024. We're glad you finally arrived. We've been waiting for you. It's good to see you. And we'll have plenty more to say about you as the season comes along. You're getting ready to jump into Big Ten conference play now for the first time. So buckle up with that. What else do we want to hang up over there? Let's see. We did Mississippi State and Vandy. Talked about Florida. Talked about Washington. Kansas lost for the second week in a row. And for the second week in a row, I'm just not going to take their helmet down and move it over there. I just can't get motivated to shit talk Kansas. But here's what I will say. Jalen Daniels, not good at quarterback. And that's a shame because he was an exciting player to watch the last couple of years. And unfortunately, due to injuries, his seasons were cut short and it kind of derailed Kansas' season. But, they've got off to some fast starts the last couple of years, found themselves ranked in the top 25 in the first half of the season, stuff like that. And then it kind of disintegrates at the end, usually because Jalen Daniels gets hurt. And he has been good and he has been fun to watch. He didn't play good. This was a Friday night game. They played UNLV. I believe it was UNLV. And UNLV beat them. And Jalen Daniels did not have a good game at all. We watched that game. We streamed it. Yeah, they lost to UNLV 23-20. So a close game, but still, you lost to a group of 5 teams, your second loss in a row. And Jalen Daniels was just an interception machine and a turnover. He just didn't play well at all. And that takes the fun, to me, out of watching Kansas play because, look, it's a good story when they make a bowl and all that. But the reason I was watching Kansas the last couple of years was because Jalen Daniels was so exciting to watch. Not good. Not good at all. Talked about West Virginia, Florida State. I guess we'll take Boston College down, although, again, who gives a shit? Nobody cares about the Jesuits. But I guess we'll take their helmet down so we can mention the fact that Mizzou barely beat them. What in the world is wrong with Missouri fans, by the way? Right now, Missouri fans are probably the fan base that's most mad at me. And that's weird because there aren't a ton of Missouri fans. So usually when a fan base gets mad at me, it's easy to notice because there's a million comments from a million people like Tennessee or Florida State or Bama or whatever it is. There's not a huge online presence for Missouri fans, at least not in the YouTube comment sections. And I've been doing this for 10 years and, a handful of them I've come across. But boy, they're mad at Uncle Lou. They're ranked 6th in the AP. I update my top 25s every Monday. So when I updated my top 25 last Monday, I did not have Missouri at number 6. And I made the statement, Missouri is not a top 6 team. They're not one of the best 6 teams in the country. They're borderline top 15. They're probably not even one of the best 12 teams in terms of playoffs. But they may end up getting into the playoffs as a result of their schedule. That's what I said in a nutshell. Oh my God. You'd have think I drove over to their trailer and fucked their cousin's mother or something. They were mad beyond belief. They couldn't see straight. They were so goddamn mad. They were shaking and drooling. Look, calling Missouri a borderline playoff team is the biggest compliment anybody's ever paid to Missouri in the history of Missouri. Not just the football team, but the state. The entire show me state. You want me to show you? Here. It's right down here. I'll show you. There. I'm showing you. You're a borderline playoff team as a result of your schedule. I mean, what? The only teams ranked, in the top 20 that you play are, I believe, Bama and Oklahoma. You're going to be a massive underdog to Alabama. I believe you play them there. Oklahoma right now is a toss-up. But ask yourself this, Missouri man. Where do I have Oklahoma ranked? Outside the top 12. Borderline top 15. Because guess what? That's what they are too. Who does Missouri fan think they are to be insulted that somebody thinks they're as good as Oklahoma? You people. Y'all are about as dumb as the Tennessee fans who want to be patted on the head every time they beat an elementary school by 70. Missouri's a good team. They're borderline top 15 teams in the country. And they may make the playoffs as a result of their schedule. I don't see them going worse than 10-2. Maybe 9-3. If they lose one, they shouldn't. But y'all getting bent out of shape and mad at Uncle Luke because I said you didn't deserve to be ranked number 6 and that I thought you were a borderline playoff team and borderline top 15 team in the country. And y'all are just, this guy's never seen a game. He obviously doesn't watch Missouri. I guess you've never heard of this guy and that guy. And, they start naming like their backup left tackle and shit. And whatever the fuck, man, Missouri. You beat Boston College, though, by 6 points. So that's something. You probably get your trophy made for that. Boston College only had 49 yards rushing, and that's what lost them this game. Heading into the game, I thought Boston College had a chance to keep it close. If what? They could make it a line of scrimmage game and shorten it, limit the possessions by sustaining drives. Well, you do that by getting first downs on the ground, and they weren't able to do that. 49 yards rushing on the day. If you just told me that stat at the end of the game, I would have said, well, Missouri probably won by 2 or 3 scores. Well, they didn't. They won by 6, but they won nevertheless 27-21. And Boston College was undefeated. That's Missouri's best win of the season. In fact, it's their only win of the season over a Power 5 team. We don't credit teams around here for beating elementary schools. So I know you beat a couple of Girl Scout teams 120-0 over the last 2 weeks or something. But as far as we're concerned around here in the real world, back here in reality, you're 1-0 against the Power 5, and that's good. You beat Boston College by 6 points at home. Say something. You won't. You won't say anything. Talked about South Carolina, talked about Wisconsin, talked about Kentucky. Arizona, whoa. Let's put Arizona over there. This was disappointing. Not necessarily disappointing that they lost. They were an underdog. They were a 7-point underdog on the road during the week. If you're a degenerate gambler like me, then don't ever bet the road team during the week. And Arizona showed you why. They did not play well on the road in Manhattan against K-State. And K-State, Kansas State, did play well after playing the week not very well. At least I didn't think so the week before. So Kansas State got it turned around. Big win over Arizona. And look, however goes Noah Fafita or whatever, so goes Arizona. And it just wasn't a great day for him. 26 of 42. 268 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Kansas State behind Avery Johnson, their quarterback, who he's quietly good too. Kansas State wins 31-7. McMillan for Arizona, best wide receiver in the country. Jeremiah Smith's great. That 15-year-old Doogie Howser kid at Alabama is great. Luther Burden is great. Ole Miss there's lots of great wide receivers in college football. McMillan for Arizona is the best wide receiver I've seen play this year. This guy is unbelievable. The body control this guy has is unimaginable. He's unbelievable. He's the best wide receiver in the country to me that I've seen play so far this year. He had 138 yards. Wasn't enough, though. Arizona lost. Kansas State had 237 rushing yards. Avery Johnson was a pretty good QB that nobody talks about. I've been talking about. He played in the bowl game last year, and I really liked him. He did okay. 14 of 23, 156 yards. That's not great, numbers, but 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's good. And he ran for 110 yards, so the guy can move too. So 156 passing might not sound like a lot, and I agree with you. It really ain't, but add 110 to that in rushing yards. That's 266 total yards from your quarterback. With no turnovers, no interceptions, and 2 touchdown passes. Most teams would take that any day of the week, but Arizona, you lost. Your season is over. Not really. You all know your season is over just means you lost yesterday. And oddly enough, this was not a conference game, even though Arizona is now in the Big 12, and so is Kansas State. This was not a conference game. This game apparently was scheduled as a non-conference game some years ago. And when the realignments and the expansions happened and Arizona joined the Big 12, these two teams agreed to keep this game on the schedule. If the Big 12 would allow it to be played as a non-conference game, the Big 12 said, okay. So even though Kansas State from the Big 12 just beat Arizona from the Big 12, it is not a conference loss and will not go towards determining conference standings at the end of the season when seeding for the conference championship game. So we'll see. Maybe these two teams will play again, although methinks not. I picked Oklahoma State to win the Big 12 in the offseason. If I had to redo that or if I had to pick right now, I still like Utah. They won this past week without Cam Rising. Kansas State and Utah right now are the two best teams I have seen in the Big 12. Oklahoma State's defense doesn't exist. I still don't like their offense. Their quarterback did have a good game this past week, but everybody has a good game every once in a while. I don't trust Oklahoma State. I just don't. They gave up 650 yards to Arkansas. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know anything else about them the rest of the year, really. 650 yards to Arkansas 2 weeks ago. I mean, come on, give me a break. How good is Arkansas? I'm glad you asked. They beat UAB 37-27. And guess what? They did not have 650 yards of offense against UAB. Oklahoma State's defense is horrendously bad, although they did get a big win, huge win for Oklahoma State over Tulsa. 45-10. Only give up 350 yards to Tulsa. Man, pat yourself on the back. Pokemon or whatever. I don't want to start calling you that. Instead of the pokes, you're going to be the Pokemon, like Pokemon cards. Okay, Pikachu looking motherfucker. So there you go. Your season is over. Teams that lost. All right, who won yesterday and looked good? Glad you asked. Indiana. This is one of my locks of the day yesterday. Indiana was a 3-point favorite on the road at a bad UCLA team, and Indiana absolutely destroyed them, 42-13. Iowa. I didn't even bother to write down who they played because I don't care. They scored 38 points. That's like 6 games worth of points for them. They won and scored 38 points. Central Florida, good win. Look, TCU's not a good team. But this is a good win because they were down and out. They were down 2 or 3 touchdowns and came back and won this game late So I gave them credit for a good win. They just wouldn't give up. Goose Malzoon and KJ Jefferson down there in Central Florida, they get beat up on the Gators here in a couple of weeks. Colorado with a good win, 28-9 over Colorado State. Why is that a good win? Well, any game Colorado wins is a good win because they're rare and they don't happen very often. Georgia Tech 59-7 over an elementary school. Nebraska 34-3 over an elementary school. Notre Dame 65-7 over Purdue. Classic overreaction here, just proving a point here. They get it's a Tennessee situation here with Notre Dame. No one takes them serious. So what do? They go out and they beat a bad team, 65-7. Good job. Oklahoma State 45-10 over an elementary school. Utah 38-21 over an in-state elementary school. Utah State with no Cam Rising. Hopefully he'll be back soon. I think he's only got about 9 years of eligibility left. So hopefully they can get him back. They play Kansas State soon, I believe. That might be next week. Somebody let me know. They play soon. That's going to be a great game. Miami beat an elementary school 62-0. Oregon beat Oregon State 49-14. Welcome to the party, Oregon. Ole Miss beat an ACC team, so basically an elementary team, 40-6. Bama beat Wisconsin 52-10. Looked really good. Texas beat an elementary school 56-7. Quinn Ewers hurt. Listen, I hope the injury's not serious. I don't want anybody to get injured. I don't. And Texas is a contender to win the SEC, a contender to make the playoffs, a contender to win the national title. Quinn Ewers is a Heisman contender. We all like watching great college football players play college football. It would be a shame, and hopefully he's not out. It's a strained abdomen or something. I'm not 100% sure. You know how these schools, this like government secrets with injury information. Hopefully he's back soon. They play two relative nobodies, and then they play Oklahoma. By relative nobodies, I mean basement-dwelling SEC teams. I think they play Louisiana Monroe. I didn't write it down. They play Louisiana Monroe and Mississippi State, I believe, is who Texas plays in the next 2 weeks. They can, trust me, they can rest Quinn Ewers if they want to. So let's get that out of the way. Hope he comes back. Get him ready for the Oklahoma game, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Arch Manning. There are a lot of you that are going to look like fucking idiots. Arch Manning is an unbelievable quarterback. The number of people who Arch Manning's a bust, never going to be any good, only gets attention because of his last name. Every rating service on the planet, every head coach on the planet wanted him. Every school wanted him. If you think it's obvious that Arch Manning is no good and he's only getting hyped because of his last name, then that means you think your coach is an idiot. Because whoever your coach is wanted Arch Manning. Every single time he has played, whether it be mop-up duty in the fourth quarter or yesterday where he had to play pretty much the entire second half, some of the first half, I think, he has looked unbelievable. And he is going to be an NFL quarterback. A lot of you look real stupid with some of the dumb shit you've been saying about Arch Manning over the last couple of years. But he absolutely lit it up. I should have wrote it down, but like an idiot. I didn't write his stats down. You can look them up if you want to, but running the ball, throwing the ball. I think he had 5 total touchdowns. Come on, man. Kansas State, talked about them, 31-7. Auburn, 45-19 over New Mexico with something at quarterback called Hank Brown. If this ain't the most made-up, fake spy name I've ever heard. Hank Brown? Could you come up with a more generic name? Hank Brown. That guy sounds like an NPC. Hank Brown. But Auburn won 45-19. You know what that means? They're not losing another game. Remember week 1, they beat an elementary school 70-0. Oh, Auburn's back. Hugh Freeze. Told you Peyton Thorne was good. They go out the next week, can't get a first down against a Power 5 team, Cal, and get humiliated, and Peyton Thorne throws 5 interceptions. Reality crashing in, right? Well, then they bench Peyton Thorne, announced this week, benching Peyton Thorne, starting this NPC that we've named Hank Brown. Auburn fans out of the woodwork. Yep, there we go, 11-1. Then he shows up. They score a bunch of points, so they're going to be saying it again this week. Then they'll play a Power 5 team, and Hank Brown will look like shit, and the Auburn fans will be back crying again. We already know that's how that's going. Who won yesterday and didn't look so good doing it? Arkansas, 37-27 over UAB. Arkansas is terrible. NC State, horrendous, 30-20 over Louisiana Tech. But don't forget Tennessee is winning the national title because they beat NC State. Missouri, 27-21 over Boston College. Not good. Not good at all, actually. I'm going to leave Missouri people alone. It was a good win for Missouri. Michigan 28-18 over Arkansas State. Warren had multiple interceptions. I think Orgy came in and threw an interception just for fun. Michigan's terrible. LSU not good over South Carolina 36-33. It was a great game, but I just don't think either of those teams is very good. Oklahoma struggled against Tulane 34-19. Jackson Arnold played amazing in the second quarter. The other three quarters, don't know where he was. Georgia 13-12, not good over Kentucky. Again, I talked for 30 minutes about that on a separate video that's already uploaded. You can go back and watch it. It was uploaded at 10 or 11 o'clock this morning. Georgia's terrible. They look like shit. They'll be lucky to win another game. They're not making a bowl game. They're overrated. Kirby doesn't know what he's doing. Carson Beck's terrible. Mike Bobo's the worst offensive coordinator on the planet. Line of scrimmage suck. All that in a video, 30 minutes long. Go watch it if you want. And the last team I've got here that won but didn't look good, who is this? Oh, yeah. Tennessee beat Mark Rogers 71-0. This is what these kinds of teams do. This team, Tennessee, this fan base, they haven't won anything at all in 26 years. No conference titles, no national titles, no trips to the playoffs, nothing. So that's what they do. They beat Kent State 100-0. It was 65-0 at halftime. There are probably 20 teams that could beat Kent State that bad. They don't do it because they don't need to do it. It's like little man syndrome. And before I go any further, because I can see the comment section, I can see the tears coming out of the comment section now. Tennessee is a really good team. Really good. Top 5 or 6 team right now, probably. And could win the SEC and whatever else after that. A team that I picked to make the playoffs in the preseason. Okay. I had Tennessee making the playoffs when I did my team-by-team prediction. So I've been high on Tennessee in the offseason, high on them in the preseason. I'm high on them now. I'm not here to tell you they're not any good. But this is what teams do who can't do anything else. To try to make themselves feel better, their fans feel better. You go out and you put 65 up on Mark Rogers in the first half. Why? And it gets worse. I know nobody watched that game. The Tennessee fans did because they had to have a reason to have a parade today. And that's what they're doing. They're having a parade because they beat Mark Rogers 70-something to nothing. It was 65-0 at halftime. We beat Mark Rogers statue. I get it. So they watched it. Nobody else did because no one watches these games. Tennessee was up 30-0 in the second quarter against a bad group of 5 team in Kent State. And they kicked an onside kick. They're Oregon from 15 years ago. That's what they are. I know Oregon's a big brand now, and everybody knows Oregon, and everybody watches Oregon, and everybody takes them serious. And oh my God, they're in the top 5 in the preseason, and now they're in the Big Ten. And oh my God, they might beat Ohio State. So you might not remember, but 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that was not the case. Oregon was a program on the rise, fighting to become relevant, fighting to become nationally known. And what were some of the kinds of things they would do? They would go for 2 in the first quarter against FCS teams. They would fake punt up 20 in the first quarter. They would kick onside kicks up 30 in the second quarter. They would run 2-point conversions in the fourth quarter up 40 and 50. Are these things sounding familiar to you? Tennessee. I've seen Tennessee score a touchdown in the first quarter this year and run a 2-point conversion against a group of 5 team. I've seen Tennessee now kick an onside kick against a group of 5 team in the second quarter when they were up 30-0. It just seems like no matter what Tennessee does, they can't get out of their own way in terms of forcing people to absolutely fucking hate them. I picked Tennessee to go 10-2. I picked them to lose their 2 toughest games. 3 weeks into the season, I still think those are their 2 toughest games. Home against Bama in a couple of weeks, about a month. And then in November, they have to come to Athens. I still think those are their 2 toughest games. They play Oklahoma next week on the road in Norman. That's probably their toughest game so far. I think they're going to beat Oklahoma by 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think they're going to destroy Oklahoma. I think Tennessee is really good. I think they could beat Bama at home. I think they could beat Georgia on the road in Athens. That's how good I think they are. Their football team this year. I don't think they will win all of those games because it's just hard. And I've predicted, my prediction this year for the SEC is that nobody would go undefeated, Georgia included. Could they? Yes. So could Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, Texas. There's 4 or 5 teams that could. I don't think any of them are. But Tennessee is really, really good. You don't have to kick onside kicks up 30-0 in the second quarter against Kent State to get people to realize that. You're like a fucking fool. Heupel looks like a fool. The coaching staff, the special team, whoever made that decision looks like a fucking idiot. And it's clown behavior. It's clown behavior. The fans celebrating it is clown behavior. And again, we've got to remember as a college football community that most Tennessee fans that type on the internet, most of them, were not even alive the last time Tennessee won the SEC, which was 26 years ago. The majority of these Tennessee fans running around are between 18 and 24, 25 years old. I mean, they've never seen them do anything. So beating Mark Rogers 70-0, being up 65-0 at halftime over Mark Rogers, and kicking an onside kick against Mark Rogers in the second quarter when they're up 30-0. That's peak for that. It's never been any better than that for them. That's the absolute peak that they've ever seen from Tennessee. So I've chosen to give them a little bit of grace, some little benefit of the doubt here. I'm not going to get on here and shit all over them for acting like total fucking retards for beating an elementary school 65-0 at halftime. And oh, by the way, they had to do onside kicks and 2-point conversions in the first half to get that lead. I'm not going to come on here and take a giant shit down their throat, toothless throat, just because they're bragging about things like that in the end mean absolutely nothing. I'm going to remind everyone once again, Arkansas and Auburn, 2 terrible teams, won their week 1 games against elementary schools by a combined score of about 160-0. They each scored 50, 60, 70 points, whatever it was. Almost any team in the country can beat those teams that way. The truly elite programs, they choose not to do it. They choose not to do it. They don't run onside kicks in the second quarter up 5 scores. They don't do that. They don't go for 2 in the first quarter against elementary school. They don't do that. They don't have to do that. They don't need to do that. You know what they're doing? They're busy rotating the 3rd string guy in the first and second quarter. That's what they're busy doing. You know why? So that in November, or now, December and January, when games really matter, they got experienced depth. That's something you don't have. Tennessee, man. So keep kicking onside kicks in the second quarter against elementary schools, groups of 5s, and FCSs when you're up 30-0. Keep running 2-point conversions so it can be 8-0 with 14 minutes to go in the first quarter instead of 7-0. Ooh! Keep doing that. Keep shoveling cookie dough down Josh Heupel's fucking fat mouth. And I'll be right here waiting for you in November. Where were we? Oh, yeah. We were right here. You wearing it out, ain't you? Wear that keyboard out, son. Type some more for me, son. Type for me, son! What are we doing? What are we doing? The Josh Pate special has to be Florida and Florida State. Florida's down, 1-2. They blown out again yesterday at home. Second straight home loss. Billy Napier's getting fired. Don't worry. Florida man, don't worry. Josh Pate special. This is what I'll tell you tonight. Don't worry. Look, it's true. Billy Napier has not worked out as head coach of Florida. Despite everything Josh Pate has told you over the last 3 years about how he's doing everything right. He's doing it the right way. He's doing everything there that they do at the programs that win. Remember all that dumb shit Josh Pate told you? He's going to tell you all that again tonight. And then you know what he's going to tell you? You got to remember, when Billy Napier got there, Florida was behind. They were behind in facilities. They were behind in budget. They were behind in staffing. And did Billy Napier win enough games? No. Did he recruit well enough? No. Does he know what he's doing most of the time? No. But he built up your program. Now you do have the facilities. Now you do have the staff and the budget. And now when you go out and make yet another bad hire, your 5th or 6th bad hire in a row, that next failure of a coach that comes in will have everything he needs already in place to fail immediately. He won't need to fail 3 years down the road after a new building is built. He'll have everything he needs to go ahead and fail right away. So he'll pat you on the head with that song and dance. And for Florida State, he's going to tell you, look, Memphis is a good team. They're probably heading to the playoffs. You gave them everything they wanted at home, 20-12. Gave them everything they wanted. A couple of plays go the other way. Who knows? Florida State might have had their first win of the year and beaten one of these elementary schools that everybody else keeps beating by 70 points, except you. You lost to them by 8. But it's no big deal. Look at what Mike Norvell did last year. 13-1. His only loss was by 60 points to Georgia. Other than that, he won the rest of the games he played. Now, what are you going to believe? What you're seeing this year or what you saw last year? Yeah, it didn't work in the portal this year, but don't worry. Portal opens again in December. You can go fishing again. Bring in a bunch more rotten fucking mud fish or whatever the fuck and restock the average fucking cabinets with talent. Don't worry. So, yeah, he's going to pat both of y'all on y'all head tonight. That's Josh Pate special tonight. Best teams I saw play this week. These are just teams I thought looked the best just this weekend on games that I actually saw, some or all of the game. Bama, Ole Miss, Oregon, and Notre Dame. Bama blew out Wisconsin. Ole Miss blew out Wake Forest. Oregon blew out Oregon State. Notre Dame blew out Purdue. Those are all Power 5 opponents. Say whatever you want. All 4 of those schools are better than Kent State. And all 4 of those teams look dominant on offense and defense. By far, to me, the 4 best teams I saw just this weekend. The best wins of the weekend, which of course is not exactly the same thing. I thought the Kansas State was a big win. It's been hard for me to figure out the pecking order in the Big 12. Who's going to be at the top? Who's going to be at the bottom? Where do the other teams slot? Is there a tier of 3 or 4 teams in the Big 12 that are at the top? Is there only 1 or 2? Anyway, this was a non-con game, like I mentioned, so it didn't count towards the standings, but it gave us an idea of where Kansas State is at relative to Arizona, and Kansas State's quite a bit ahead of them. Kansas State looks like the team to beat right now in the Big 12, them in Utah. Just my opinion. I thought that was a good win. Bama, on the road. The SEC don't never play up there, yada, yada, yada. Bama went up there and won by 100. Ole Miss looks unstoppable. Oregon, I think that I put that down as the best win just because it's been mind-boggling to me how bad they've played the first 2 weeks. They finally got it together and they rolled over Oregon State. And Notre Dame, look, Notre Dame caught a lot of shit last week, by myself included, and they deserved every bit of it, right? Losing to Northern Illinois home is unacceptable. And winning yesterday against Purdue doesn't cover that up. It doesn't make up for that. But Notre Dame could have tucked tail. They could have pouted. They could have not showed up for this one on the road against an undefeated Purdue team. They didn't do any of that. They came together. They did what they needed to do, and they absolutely destroyed Purdue. So I gave them credit for a best win of the week. Here's the Heisman list, and we got some shaking up here. Still in my top 4, Cam Ward. Yeah, he played in elementary school, but he had 346 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. I got him in my top 4. Travis Hunter still in my top 4. As long as Colorado's got less than 4 losses, I'm telling you right now, Travis Hunter's going to be in my top 4 because I think he's the best football player in America. He had 13 catches for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you know what he does on the defensive side of the ball. He's a lockdown corner. Quinn Ewers, he did get hurt, and listen, he can't miss significant time or he's going to have to come off the Heisman list. It's nothing against Quinn Ewers. It doesn't mean he's not one of the best quarterbacks, but the Heisman is a stats award. And the more time you miss, the less likely it becomes you're going to win the Heisman. That's just the reality. I left him on because he was 14 of 16, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception before he got hurt. Heisman numbers, no, but decent numbers for basically 1 quarter of football, 1.5, whatever it was. So I left him on here this week, but he can't miss more than a game or 2, or he's just going to have to come off the Heisman list. It's that simple. Carson Beck off the Heisman list. Terrible performance. Worst game of his career as a starter. Missed throws, and by missed throws I mean off-target throws. And then missed wide open receivers like he didn't see him, didn't even throw him the ball. Overthrows on some deep balls again. Narrowly avoided an interception or 2 really, and just didn't play. By far his worst game of his career. He's off my Heisman list for this week because I only do 4. I only do 4 Heisman names a week, so he's off. Onto the list in his place, Jackson Dart. I was just waiting on him to do this to a Power 5 team. Ole Miss has rolled everybody they've played, but it's been elementary schools up to this point. We can make an argument about whether or not Wake Forest and how good they are or whatever, but it is a Power 5 program. Jackson Dart, 377 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, another 35 yards rushing and a touchdown on the ground. So 3 total touchdowns and over 400 yards of total offense for Jackson Dart. And he's probably the front runner right now in my mind. If I don't rank them, these aren't in any order, but if I had to rank them, I would have Jackson Dart as number 1 on my Heisman list right now. The We're Back list, is this the last thing? Yeah, all right, here's the updated We're Back list. Last week, this was the order last week, okay? Had Miami at 1, had Tennessee at 2, had Florida at 3, and Notre Dame at 4. Notre Dame had just lost, of course, to Northern Illinois. The updated rankings on the We're Back list. Again, the qualifications to be on this list. These teams have to have not won anything in at least 10 years. And by anything, I mean they can't have won their conference, a playoff game, or a national title. If they've won any of those things in the last 10 years, they're not eligible for this list, okay? They also have to have a very large presence on the internet that constantly runs around every offseason telling everybody they're back. Okay, here's this week's ranking of those 4 teams. Tennessee moves up to the top spot. They are the closest to being back right now. Miami right on their heels at number 2. I think there's a good chance both Tennessee and Miami make the playoffs this year, in which case they stand a very good chance of coming off the We're Back list because at that point they may actually be back. Number 3, I moved Notre Dame up a spot from 4. Notre Dame blew out Purdue, so I moved them to 3. Florida lost at home to a bad Texas A&M team, so I moved them down to 4. So Tennessee 1, Miami 2, Notre Dame 3, Florida 4. That's your official We're Back list. All right, again, if there was no intro at the beginning of this video, I apologize. It's because I was up to, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but I was up till 4:30 in the morning, had to get up at 7:30, then made a 30-minute Georgia video this morning because I knew y'all would cry if I didn't talk about Georgia in the Your Season Is Over video. But because Georgia won, we don't talk about teams that win in the Your Season Is Over video. So I made a 30-minute video about how terrible Georgia is. You can click back and watch that. I uploaded it around lunchtime today. Because of all of that, I am recording the talking part you're seeing now of the Your Season Is Over video first. Normally I record the intro first, so I have not recorded an intro. Depending on what time it is and what sort of shape I'm in, by the time I'm done with this, I may not make a dramatic intro for Your Season Is Over today. If that's the case, I apologize to those of you who enjoy that. Believe me, I enjoy it too. And to the ones of you that tell me every week that you hate it and I need to stop doing it and you wish I would quit, you're welcome, and go fuck yourself. Have a great day. Appreciate you watching. Talk to you again soon.